We use generic to store a different object using a single class implementation, and it is very simple to use generic. Before we use generic, let's see the problem that we are trying to solve. Let me create a class, Java class list. Now we have a class list, and using this class list, let me create an array of integer, and let the array be the name list of items, okay. Now list of items equal to new integer, let's set it to 10. Now that we set it to 10, and let's create a method to add the items into our array. Public void add, okay. Now that we create a method, this method will have a parameter, and this parameter is integer. Since that we deal with integer, item, okay. Now that we have item, and we can use this list of items to store item, the item which is part of the method. We can use the method to add item into the list. Now we have list of items, okay. Instead of passing index 0 or 1 or any number, we can use the counter, since that we can call the method so many times to add items. Now let me create a private integer counter. Now we have private integer counter, and let's use this counter here equal to this item that we have. So, and we want this item to increment, this counter to increment whenever we call the method, okay. We can use this counter plus plus, and with this implementation we can add item to our array, okay. And let's use another method, public void print, to print the items in the array that we just create. Now with this print method, let's create a for loop, integer I equal to 0 and I less than list of items dot length. We have I plus plus, and using this we can print, we will just print the list of items. Now that we have this, let list of items of I. Okay, now let's test this class and see what we have. We have list equal to new list. Now since that we have this, let's use to access our add method. Here we have 10. Let's duplicate this and change the values. Now let this be 20 and let leave it to 30. Okay, using our print method, let's test this and see what we will have. Here is the implementation of the integer class. Here is the counter variable that we use to increment the count whenever we call the method again. Okay, now we have 10, 20, 30, and we have the remaining variable that the remaining 10 items that we have not we have not added item to. Okay, now let's see the problem is from these items.length. As long as items.length less than as long as I less than list of items.length. Okay, from here we'll change this to counter. Now as long as I less than the counter, now our counter will increment now using this tree method from 0, 1, 2. Now our counter will be 3 here. Now as long as I less than 3, I plus plus, then we can print this. Let me see if we solve this problem. Okay, now you see that we solved this problem. We are not using items that length. Okay, now to remove or to solve confusion let me print here, let me print the counter variable to see the length of the counter or the size of the counter. Now you see the size of the counter is 3. I did this to avoid confusion. The size of our counter is 3 because we call this method here 3 times, and the counter increment as long as we call this method. Now the problem that we have with this implementation is that we cannot store a string here. You see, we will have an arrow. We cannot store a string. So next we can use generic to see how we can solve this problem. And to solve this problem using generic, let's modify this. Let's modify this class. Now we can use here these parentheses and add t or e as a parameter that we can pass when we call this class list. And in this parameter, if we deal with integer, we will pass a wrapper class for integer. We will, whatever we create, we can pass the object here as a parameter, and I prefer to use e here. Now this integer will be replaced with e. Okay, we have problem here. Here supposed to be, we have e again here. Okay, this we will remove this new, and this will be object. We will cast it to object. Here we will have something like this. Okay, now we have something like this. We cast our e to object. Whatever we pass here, we are casting it to this object, and the size of this our e will be 10. Okay, now let's use this e here again. Okay, now we have e again here, and this print, we will modify this print to modify this print to will not longer be, and it will return something else here. Now return. Now what are we going to return here? Okay, what we will return is list of items Okay, we will have list of items here, but with this implementation we cannot achieve the print method. We cannot achieve the print method. We can use iterator and iterable interface to print this list of items that we have here. But let me delete this now for now. Okay, now that we create this, we will pass whatever the list will be. It will be decided by this parameter. Now if it is integer, you see we have arrow here unless we use string. Okay, now that we use string, you see the arrow has gone, and in case we use double, the arrow will not disappear unless we set it to 3.5 like this. okay, or any number that is a floating number. Okay, now suppose it is boolean. Here we will have error unless we self it to a boolean value. This is how we use generic to store a list of items in a simple manner without having to create another class like boolean class or integer class, something like this. Okay, now let's use string, and in this string we can let's duplicate this. A, and let here we have P. Okay, now the next thing we are going to try is that to print this list of items. Okay, now that we have this, we show you how to use generic and how to create a class generic. Now what remaining is that how we can print this list of items that we have. And for now there is so many ways to print this item. For now let's just print this item, and later I will show you how to print the item using iterator and iterable interface in the next lesson that we will talk on collection. But for now let me use a simple way to print this item. And in our list class that we have, let me create a public class, public void print. In this method all we have to do is print the item, and but before we print this item we have to set another counter here, integer counter 1 equal to 0. Now I set this to 1 since that we already have another counter, and I set this to 0 because this is the variable it's a member of a method, this variable, and this one is a member of a class. We don't have to set it to 0, it will be initially 0. Okay, now after having this we will have like while loop. In this while loop you will have something like this: while counter 1 is not equal to counter that we have, which is this counter, while this counter that we have in this method is not equal to this counter. Okay, we'll print something like this. What we will print is that this is the list of our items, and then with counter 1 plus plus. Okay, having this, let me test before we proceed. Here I have already have this one, the one that I test. Let's print the another one. Okay, we have nothing printed. Let me check what is the problem. Okay, we did not call the print method list.print. The problem is that we did not call the method here. Okay, even though that we call the method, we still have some issues. Let's go back to the list class. We have integer counter, while counter, sorry, here we supposed to have is not equal to. Okay, while counter 1 is not equal to this counter system.out to print the list of items. Okay, now we have ABC, and let's change this to something else again and see what we will have. Here is our main method, and let's change this one to integer and have 1, 2, 3. Let's run the program again. You see here we have 1, 2, 3, and for example at the same time if we have boolean and have true, false, true, you will the same have this. This is how we build a generic class and use generic, and there is a way to use without using this print, because this print is limited to some works that we will use, that we are using in Java. Okay, we have list. Now let me show you another list that we have that use the iterable and iterator interface. Now let's use this list. We have default package list and we have list in the Java util, and in this list let's have something that, let's set it to integer. Now that arrays dot as list. Now we will pass the variable that we want to print here, the number, the values that we want to print, assuming we have 1, 2, 3, and using this list we can simply iterate over this because it have the iterator and iterable interface, which we will talk in the collection lesson that we will talk about. Now let's use var and have list 1 equal to no colon list. Okay, in this all we have to do is print list 1, and let's see the output of this. Okay, now you see that we have this output, and with the list that we have here, because that this list implement this class, we can easily iterate over this as list that we have, but we cannot iterate over the list that I created earlier, the default list package. Let's try it and see. Let me undo. Okay, here we have this. Now let me try using this to print. You see here it's not possible to print our default list using this, unless if we implement the iterable and iterator interface. And in the next lesson, I think we can cover the iterable and iterator interface, and we will look some of collection framework we will cover. I hope you will follow our videos to see how we can solve programming program. Thank you very much.